2019 is going to be a very interesting year for us. Of course, last year also was, but this is really going to be that election year. Markets, we're sort of constantly discussing what outcomes one could have, what mistakes perhaps investors made in 2018 and how they can perhaps avoid them in 2019. One of the main mantras of investing wisely has been to avoid greed and fear. Right? Those are two things. And I'm bringing this into an overall discussion before we get into the actual financial planning. What are some of the key recommendations you have going into this year, 2019?
Okay. So first, learnings of 2018.
Yeah.
One clear learning in 2018 is to never invest looking at the rear view mirror. People were very interested in buying equities, mid-cap stocks, small-cap stocks, PMSs, क्योंकि उनकी 2017 में रिटर्न आई थी 50%, 40%, 60%. तो लोगों की जो प्रति वो जागरूकता, मतलब the curiosity to buy these products was very high. But if you look at rear view mirror and invest, you are bound to maybe fall prey to mean reversion. जो भी ऊपर जाता है वो नीचे भी आता है. So debt was very bad for 2017, equity was very good, but just the opposite happened in 2018.
Yeah.
So point one is, don't look at rear view mirrors so much. Whenever the returns have been stupendous in the past, be more worried to invest in that in the future. That's learning one, right? So we had recommended to hedge people's portfolio. कि अगर market गिर जाए तो आपकी portfolio insured होनी चाहिए. So what was the recommendation at the beginning of 2018? Saying that market has done so well, थोड़े पैसे खर्च करके अपने पोर्टफोलियो को इंश्योर कर लो. जैसे जान को इंश्योर करते हैं, गाड़ियों को इंश्योर करते हैं, वैसे ही पोर्टफोलियो इंश्योरेंस होता है सस्ते में. So point one is, looking at rear view mirror is not the best idea. If I don't look at rear view mirror, then what do I look at? Is the next question. So you can look at, in finance there are so many ways to extrapolate future. One such subject is called regression. So finance में बहुत सारी चीजें हैं जो आपको फ्यूचर को बेटर प्रेडिक्ट करने की क्षमता रखते हैं. So that's what is the advisor's job, to not show you the rear view mirror, but try using all the finance tools available to protect your downsides and also try and better predict, not perfectly predict, better predict the future. So that's point one. Point two, learning is that don't ever fall prey to another emotion, which Fatima mentioned, fear and greed. Okay, डर और लालसा के बीच में दूसरा एक इमोशन भी है, which is called fear of missing out. कि यार मेरा पड़ोसी कुछ कर रहा है, मैं कर नहीं पाया हूं. Fear of missing out, FOMO कहते हैं. This is a very, very strong emotion. Somebody comes and tells that यार मैंने बिटकॉइन खरीदे, मैं रह गया हूं यार, मैं कुछ तो करूं. तो मैं रह ना जाऊं, उस जज्बात को fear of missing out कहते हैं. Fear and greed comes after investing. Fear of missing out happens to a person who is not invested. Fear of missing out. So Bitcoin was one such example which went from wherever, इतना ऊपर चला गया था कि every day I used to get calls from different people saying that should I invest in Bitcoin. That has come back to 3,000 from 19,000. People have washed away their capital. So if you saw what was the recommendation in 2018, you will appreciate what is being said in hindsight today. So don't fall prey to fear of missing out, because people will come with their products and invoke this, saying that sir, उसने AIF में डाला, alternate investment fund में डाला, उसके 28% बन गए, आपके सिर्फ 15 बने. Right? Then you start considering. So fear of missing out, if somebody could have controlled the urge and saying that मुझे 15 चाहिए, मुझे 15 मिल रहा है, I am not worried of what the neighbor is earning. If you can do this too, I think these are important learnings.
Yeah.
To my mind.
Regression, as you were talking about as a tool, I just want you to expand on that a little bit more, and the larger point that you make about how It's all really there. The financial tools really are there to create a sane portfolio. What are some reasonable requests HNIs should be making or should really be sort of leveraging on when it comes to private wealth management in terms of that whole, the maths that can really be out there, the stuff that's all in there, but perhaps one doesn't usually focus on. You talked about regression, for example.
Correct.
I'm sure there are other tools that exist within portfolios. What are some of those tools?
See, words, unfortunately, the names are so complex, regression, intimidates people, saying that, yaar, ye kya complex cheez hai?
Yeah.
Right? It's not so difficult, and that's where the advisor has to use those seemingly complex, they're not even complex. Regression is nothing but also called statistical astrology. Every one of us knows astrology, right? It's called statistical astrology, which tries to draw a trend line. And it's a subject which has won Nobel Prize, so if I don't use it today to manage these thousands of crores of people, then when will I use it? So regression is nothing but also called statistical astrology, which helps you draw a trend line to figure out what the future could look like. Now, what are the other tools? I'll just name them. Don't get intimidated. They're actually very simple. Today, you just need to know their name. Excel sheet can do regression for you. I don't even know how it is done. I don't even need to know. Technology can help. There is one thing which is called Monte Carlo simulation. नाम सुनो तो कितना इंटिमिडेटिंग है. मॉन्टे कार्लो साहब ने इन्वेंट किया, इसीलिए उसको कहते हैं मॉन्टे कार्लो सिमुलेशन. ही कैन आर्बिट्रली it can project the next 1,000 years of Nifty arbitrarily and say what could be the outcomes.
Okay.
What could be the different outcomes. देखिए अब निफ्टी को, हमारी मार्केट को सिर्फ 30 साल ज्यादा से ज्यादा हुए हैं, राइट? 30 years में market has maximum fallen 40% in 3 years. So सबसे ज्यादा खराब क्या हुआ है? 3 साल 2000 से 2003 के बीच में मार्केट ऑलमोस्ट 40% गिर गई. ये उसका सबसे खराब परफॉर्मेंस रहा है. बट 30 साल में इज नॉट 30 years is only 30 years, राइट? इफ आई वांट टू से दैट अगले 100 साल में इससे खराब कुछ हो सकता है कि नहीं, सो मॉन्टे कार्लो सिमुलेशन हेल्प्स यू से. एंड मॉन्टे कार्लो सिमुलेशन सेज 62% भी गिर सकती है मार्केट. So what are the tools? I'm just telling you there are several tools. You don't need to learn them. And they're very simple. They look more intimidating. So if you don't look at rear view mirror, then what do you look at? There are finance tools which your advisor needs to apply to bring more data-backed advice. People should not advise on perception and impressions. They should advise on the basis of data.
Okay.
That's what I meant.
Those are two of the many tools that you've sort of spoken about in the past. Just while we're at it, we've often talked about this whole fear of liquidity measurement in the markets, and also how ratings agencies have sort of evaluated companies. Those have in turn then affected people's credibility in the markets as well as companies. What is the best way of really being able to assess the longevity or the credit worthiness of a company? There's a particular tool that you've mentioned earlier, and I want to bring it up as we go ahead, before we really get into what's going to be happening with the elections and how we can actually look at structured products and financial planning.
Yes, Fatima. I think very, very important point Fatima is bringing out. Before I get to the answer of company डूबेगी कि नहीं, ये देखने का क्या और जरिया हो सकता है, like Fatima is asking. Risk. The risk is the only thing you control. रिटर्न हमारे हाथ में ही नहीं है. कितनी रिटर्न बनेगी आपका एडवाइजर डिक्टेट नहीं कर पाएगा. कितनी आप रिस्क लेंगे वो एडवाइजर और आप पे ही निर्भर करता है. सो वन थिंग विच आई अर्ज यू टू आस्क ऑल योर एडवाइजर्स, बिकॉज वी एज अ कम्युनिटी गेट अवे वेरी इजिली. व्हाट एम आई ट्राइंग टू गेट टू? अगर मैंने, इफ आई टोल्ड यू गुड रिटर्न, इसमें अच्छी रिटर्न बनेगी, तो अगला सवाल आप जरूर पूछेंगे मुझसे कि कितनी भाई. अच्छे का क्या मतलब है? अच्छे मींस 10, 20, 30, टेल मी अ नंबर. सिमिलरली द अदर पहलू ऑफ इन्वेस्टिंग विच इज रिस्क, रिटर्न और रिस्क दो ही पहलू हैं इस इन्वेस्टिंग गेम के. रिस्क के बारे में नंबर मांगिए आप. रिस्क लोग कहते हैं लो रिस्क, मीडियम रिस्क, हाई रिस्क. Risk should be measured. Risk can be measured. Risk can be very easily measured. Return is measured, risk is not measured. If you ask your advisor what is the return the product will make, he will tell you. Will he tell you the risk measured in mathematics? He will only tell you an English word, low, medium, high. So please, as a client, it is your right. Forget right, because you have extra money, it's your duty to ask risk numbers. How to understand them, you will automatically understand over a period. Return इतने सालों से देखा तो समझ आ गई. रिस्क अगर साल भर देखेंगे तो वो भी समझ में आ जाएगी रिस्क मेजर कैसे होती है. रिस्क मेजर करने के 4 बहुत अच्छे जरिए हैं. ट्रेजरी में रोज मेरे सबसे स्मार्ट ट्रेडर्स जो है, every day they send me an Excel sheet. They are from Cambridge, IITs, IIMs, those very, very high paid. Okay, almost $1 million salary they take from me as a company. They give me an Excel sheet which has 4 sheets every day to say what is the risk I took on Mr. Rati's money. But for years, risk is not measured. And so, on that topic, I am requesting people to start asking for risk measurements, not just return measurements.
Okay.
Because risk is the only thing you will be able to manage. Return is external. Risk is manageable. इसीलिए उसको कहते हैं risk management. रिटर्न की जब बात आती है तो व्हाट डू पीपल से? एक्सपेक्टेड रिटर्न. रिस्क मैनेजमेंट. कोई रिटर्न मैनेजमेंट नहीं कहता है, एक्सपेक्टेड रिटर्न. मैं सिर्फ उम्मीद कर सकता हूं रिटर्न की. रिस्क के बारे में बात आते हैं तो एक्सपेक्टेड रिस्क नहीं कहता है कोई, रिस्क मैनेजमेंट कहते हैं. सो प्लीज मेजर योर रिस्क. It's very easy to measure. If somebody spent 1 day to understand risk measurements, I don't think it can take more than 1 day for a person who has the acumen to invest to take more than a day. I think that's the point I would.
And while we're talking about risk, I think the word risk itself is often misunderstood as well, Feroz. And perhaps as a wealth manager as well as an investor, you can talk to us a little bit more about that. It's very often taken as the English definition of what risk is versus I guess what risk can provide as an opportunity. So can you tell us a bit, you've touched upon it, but I just want to clarify this because I think there's still a lot of investors, no matter how sophisticated you are, HNIs of course are, the word risk itself can be a little off-putting, so to speak. There can be different associations with it. So tell us a little bit more in terms of your key takeaways with HNI portfolios and the whole concept of risk.
Correct. I think risk, Fatima, like you mentioned, is misunderstood. The best definition I have read, I think it was some Harvard professor had written this statement, if my memory serves me right. The definition of risk is permanent loss of value. Permanent loss of value is called risk. Now, in 10 years, अगर आपने, if you would have bought, India में mutual fund started in 95, private sector mutual fund, 93, 95. If you bought any of these mutual funds for 10 years, on any given day, 10 साल के लिए अगर आप खरीदते, तो सबसे बदनसीब भी हम निकलते, तो उसमें 11% की रिटर्न मिलती. If you were the most unluckiest 10-year investor, per year, how much would you have made? 11%. If you invested for years, not for 2 years. So I don't consider this as risk. बीच में 30% का loss भी हुआ होगा. But अगर if I stayed invested for 10 years, the worst person's return, 10-year investors is 11%. So I would not call equity investing as risk. Okay. Largely. Because permanent loss is called risk. For example, आपने मुझे उधार दिया और मैं भाग गया और मैंने आपको पैसे वापस नहीं किए तो शायद 50 साल बाद भी वापस नहीं करूंगा. That is permanent loss of capital. That is called credit risk. So you have to understand different types of risk. There are different types of risk. Risks are classified in 3 different folds. First classification, after 2008, which was one of the most riskiest year, I did a course on risk to get a perspective on risk. And it was a very good course, so it taught me risk 2 किस्म से होते हैं, 2 किस्म के होते हैं. One is repairable, the other is irreparable. जैसे हम देखते हैं विच इज कॉल्ड रिपेयरेबल, इरिपेयरेबल और रिवर्सेबल, इरिवर्सेबल, जख्म की तरह होता है जो खुद से सूख जाता है, दैट इज रिपेयरेबल। कैंसर वक्त से बढ़ता जाता है और खुद से सूखता नहीं है। सो दीज आर द टू कैटेगरीज। So if I give you an example, if the market falls tomorrow, 5% गिर गई, इलेक्शन के बाद 10% गिर गई, साल भर, 2 साल, 3 साल, 4 साल में तो वापस आ ही जाएगी। सो इट्स अ रिवर्सेबल रिस्क। मार्केट रिस्क इज रिवर्सेबल। आज गिरेगी तो 10 साल में तो वापस ऊपर आ ही जाएगी, राइट? So the point I'm trying to make is there are two types of risk: reversible, irreversible. Classify your risk as reversible, irreversible, and then if I give you an example of irreversible risk, महंगाई, inflation is irreversible. जो आपने 10 रुपए में डोसा खाया होगा 10 साल पहले, कितना भी समय दे दीजिए, वापस 10 रुपए में डोसा नहीं मिलेगा. So that's a महंगाई is a irreversible risk. You understand? So it will never get reversed.
Okay.
So I'm just giving you illustrations to say that risk is a subject which you should measure, point 1. Point 2, you should understand which risks are irreversible. Be scared of them also, is the point.
Okay.
Otherwise you put money in fixed deposit and say that यार fixed deposit में पड़ा है, but महंगाई को मात नहीं दे रहा है, so you have to respect all these risks which are irreversible. Lending to a person is an irreversible risk if he goes bankrupt.
Okay.
महंगाई is an irreversible risk, to illustrate.
Okay. I'm going to get into this part of the conversation about portfolios. Away from, of course, understanding the importance of really having the right idea about your snapshot, right? I mean, you've talked about how one has to look at one's asset profile in totality. I want to particularly focus on real estate. So especially sitting here in Gurgaon, I want to focus on real estate. I want to talk about how you think that figures in an HNI portfolio, also the realities of what we live with, which is that people do have real estate that they live in and also real estate that they perhaps manage at this stage. Given the way the real estate market has gone, what are your recommendations for people who are sitting on number one positions of real estate? Also, how should they really be looking realistically at what their real estate asset is? Is it the house that you live in? Is it going to be about the house that you can give on to your children? Is it something you can rent out? What should be the key focus going forward for HNIs?
I think real estate, I will share some learnings on real estate. Of course, real estate we have, that is reality. As Indians, 60% of HNI money is in real estate.
Yeah.
Like it or not, 60% पैसा अमीर लोगों का इंडिया में 62% real estate में है. So point 1 when it comes to real estate is that please include it in your balance sheet first. उसको नजर के नीचे लेके आइए, बैलेंस शीट में डालिए. Because advisors don't insist on that because उनको पता है कि ये पैसे तो उनके पास आएंगे ही नहीं, कब बिकेगी, कब प्रॉपर्टी आएगी, एडवाइजर को भी पड़ी नहीं है. Because he knows जो बैंक अकाउंट में है वो मैं कल ले जाऊंगा. If I am an advisor, if I give good advice, I know if there is 2 crores in the bank account, I'll take it tomorrow. He doesn't care because the apartment, if the client agrees to sell also, it will take him 1 year to sell in this markets. First is bring all your real estate in your balance sheet. Point 2, Fatima mentioned a word called management. We don't manage real estate at all. We over manage our financial instruments and under manage our real estate instruments. We say रहने दो ना यार, value आ जाएगी, आज नहीं आ रही है. I'll give you my dad's example. He said I will sell my factory at 2 crores in Mysore long back. It took him 6.5 years to sell it at 2 crores, and the day when he sold it at 2 crores, he called me and said, Firoz, देख, तूने कहा था कि 2 करोड़ में नहीं बिकेगी, मैंने बेच चुका हूँ. तो मैंने कहा, Dad, of course you will not like me saying this, but 2 crores 6.5 years back and 2 crores today is like 80 lakhs today, right? Then he said, I'll remove your name from my will. He didn't like me that day for sure, but I have to give him the right advice. So point is manage it equally. and bring it to your fold, because the advisor will not tell you so much. Because I, as an advisor, if I have written article on ET 5 years back that real estate में एक रुपया नहीं डालना चाहिए, और मेरे पहचान वाले क्लाइंट पैसा डाल रहे हैं या निकाल नहीं रहे, that is not fair. So manage it. Point 2, measure it in the same tarazu. I'll explain what I'm saying. Real estate we don't measure in percentage. हम ये कहते हैं कि ये घर लिया था 4 गुना हो गया, 10 साल में देखो ये 5 गुना हो गया, उसको भी परसेंटेज में मेजर कीजिए. Why? It'll give you a very different perspective. So don't measure it in multiples, measure it in percentage per year, post-tax, pre-tax. Now one person I met, he said, I bought an apartment in Lokhandwala, Mumbai, 64 lakhs, 98 में खरीदा था, 64 lakhs का, 64 लाख का, आज 3.5 करोड़ का हो गया है. कितने बार हो गया? Almost 4 times, 5 times हो गया, little over 5 times. देखने को 5 times is not a bad return. In fact, the client was telling me, यार काश मैं 4 खरीद लेता, तब पैसे भी थे, बिल्डर पीछे भी पड़ा था. तो मैंने कहा सर डेफिनेटली खरीद लेते, बट उसकी परसेंटेज रिटर्न कैलकुलेट कर लेते, तो 11% की रिटर्न आई. देखने को कितना दिखा? 5 गुना हो गया. कैलकुलेटर लेके कैलकुलेट करो तो कितनी आती है? 11%. Then I showed him that if you lend to government of India at that point in time, the return government of India was giving 13.5%. So the real estate investment did worse off than lending to government of India.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that real estate mein mat invest karo, but same tarazu mein tolo, then you will get a good perspective.
Okay.
Especially in the long run. These are the 2 important learnings which I've had.
If I'm understanding correctly, what you're basically saying is that physical assets such as, and I'm going to throw in gold as well, because that's another habit we have as Indians also. Gold, real estate, ideally they should be as less as possible in a portfolio, and financial assets of course should be higher. I want to just understand the kind of balance one should look at given the realistic place real estate has in one's life.
Real estate is a very important asset class.
Yeah.
No denying that. Because there are only 2 asset classes which can make you beat inflation. महंगाई को मात देने के सिर्फ 2 ही इन्वेस्टमेंट के जरिए हैं. एक तो इक्विटी है, दूसरा है रियल एस्टेट. डिपॉजिट में डाल के पैसे महंगाई से ज्यादा कर ही नहीं सकते आप बाय डिजाइन. गोल्ड में डाल के आप महंगाई को मात नहीं दे पाएंगे. तो देयर आर ओनली 2 एसेट क्लासेस व्हिच beat inflation, which is equity and real estate. But real estate for the next 3-4 years as well has gone significantly ahead.
Okay.
Than what it should have gone, because our country has very few rich people. There are 8 lakh apartments ready for possession with OC, with occupation certificate in 7 cities of India. There are 8 lakh apartments up for a sale, completed and with OC. In a country where there are only 80,000 people who file taxes above 1 crore. There is only 86,000 people who file taxes more than 1 crore. FY16, 2 साल पहले की डेटा है, अभी का आंकड़ा नहीं आया है. So ऐसे कंट्री में जिस सिर्फ 86,000 लोग के पास की पगार या कमाई 1 करोड़ के ऊपर हो, उस कंट्री में 8 लाख घर हो जिसकी वैल्यू 80 लाख 90 लाख की हो एवरेज. तो बेसिक इकोनॉमिक्स कहता है कि डिमांड कम और सप्लाई ज्यादा हो तो दाम बढ़ नहीं सकते. राइट? इसीलिए तो कभी कभार प्याज 2 रुपए केजी होता है, कभी 50 रुपए हो जाता है. बिकॉज इफ डिमांड इज लेस एंड सप्लाई इज मोर, बेसिक इकोनॉमिक्स सेज प्राइस कांट राइज. So 4 years back it was very evident, 5 years back it was very evident. So we have pleaded our clients to sell real estate even at a little discount and come into financial instruments. There will be a time in the future where real estate will take the driver's seat to propel people's growth.
When will that be? That's a key question.
That's a key question, but it's at least 3-4 years away.
Okay, okay. Speaking of real estate and the various asset classes you've talked about, very quickly, at the moment, what do you think the asset allocation should be in high net worth portfolios? And also, how often should these portfolios be reviewed by HNIs?
I think 65% of one's money should be in equity.
Okay.
35 should be in debt. 65 in equity, 35 in debt. Now, to a general large audience like this, giving a thumb rule like this might seem very cliched and very thumb rule-ish. But I think 65-35, 65 into equity, 35 into debt for long-term monies greater than 5 years, 7 years is a very good place to be. Why? Because the economy will be growing at 7-8%. The companies can easily grow at 13-14%. अगर economy 7-8% से grow होती है, जो कंपनीज चला रहे हैं, जो स्मार्ट इंडियंस हैं, वो अपनी कंपनी को 13-14% पे ग्रो कर पाएंगे. And then if an advisor comes to manage your risk, then you will be able to make 14-15% on equity with managed risks.
Okay.
Managed risk is the key word here. So 65-35. If a person is low on risk, then I will hedge him more. I will insure him more to a fall.
Speaking of hedging and different strategies here, you've been a pioneer in the structured products industry. Quick definition, of course, for those investors who are perhaps not invested in structured products, what are they? Also, how do you choose the one that's right for you? Because one does get exposure to these, given the kind of market environment that exists. And also, how do you assess the credibility of a structured product?
Very good. So we looked at all the products which wealth management industry can offer you. हमने पूरे प्रोडक्ट्स लिखे, तो 11-12 किस्म के प्रोडक्ट्स हैं जो वेल्थ मैनेजमेंट कंपनी आपको दे सकती है. उस 12 में से हमने बहुत डेटा एनालिसिस करके ये कंक्लूजन किया था 7 साल पहले कि 2 ही प्रोडक्ट होने चाहिए, बाकी सब में without the rest of the 9 you can live a very comfortable life and make a very consistent return without eliminating the rest of the 9. Which are those 2? One is mutual fund and the other is structured product. No to PMS, no to AIF, and I'll give you enough data to prove that they are detrimental to you and beneficial to advisor. All of them have a commission structure which is significantly more than both these product categories. So point one I'm making is you can live your life, and my portfolio there's nothing other than these 2, and my returns are reasonably good, and if somebody wants to audit that. So point one is these are the only 2 products you should use to at least for the next 5-7 years till data changes. Point 2, mutual fund is plan A. Mutual fund is plan A. Structure product, in my opinion, or Anand Rathi as a representative I'm saying, in Anand Rathi company's opinion, structure product is plan B. Plan A, plan B. Now question to ask ourselves is, छोटी छोटी बातों में हमारे पास प्लान ए होता है, प्लान बी होता है. रेस्टोरेंट में रिजर्वेशन नहीं मिली तो इधर जाएंगे, प्लान ए है, प्लान बी है. इन्वेस्टमेंट में प्लान ए और प्लान बी होना चाहिए कि नहीं होना चाहिए? पहला सवाल ये होना चाहिए. क्यों ये सवाल होना चाहिए? कि बिकॉज एडवाइजर जब भी आपका पोर्टफोलियो बनाता है ना, तो पोर्टफोलियो डिजाइन करते वक्त ये मान लेता है मन में कि मैं तो सही जाऊंगा ही जाऊंगा, और ऐसा कोई एडवाइजर पैदा नहीं हुआ है. आई विल गो रॉन्ग, other advisors will go wrong. If I go wrong, should my client not make any money? So plan B is there to make sure that when an advisor goes wrong, you still are in a safer position. Okay. So point one I'm making, Fatima, is to say structure product acts like a plan B in the portfolio. Like last 3 years, market didn't do too much. Market घूम फिर के थोड़ा सा ऊपर गई है, तब स्ट्रक्चर प्रोडक्ट ने बहुत अच्छा प्रदर्शन दिया है. राइट? क्योंकि स्ट्रक्चर प्रोडक्ट ये कहता है कि मार्केट नाउ, सो पॉइंट 1 स्ट्रक्चर प्रोडक्ट शुड बी प्लान बी. पॉइंट 2 आई एम मेकिंग, लास्ट 3 years स्ट्रक्चर प्रोडक्ट विल लुक वेरी वेरी गुड, बट बिकॉज म्यूचुअल फंड्स डिडंट डू वेरी वेल, देयर विल आल्सो बी अ टाइम where mutual funds will do so well that structure product will look like a dumb decision, because both of them work in the opposite direction. That's the second feature of a structure product. Because some client asked me saying that यार पूरे पैसे structure product में ही डाल दे, क्योंकि mutual fund में return नहीं आ रही, structure product में इतनी अच्छी return आई. The purpose of the structure product is to help you when mutual fund is not giving, and vice versa, so that there is a balance in the portfolio. What is a structure product, which I should have told you earlier? It is a combination of deposit and an instrument called derivative.
Okay.
ये दोनों का एक मिश्रण बनता है, उससे जो रिटर्न आ सकती है वो उस रिटर्न को एक स्ट्रक्चर प्रोडक्ट के तौर पे दिया जाता है.
Okay.
So it's a combination of deposit and derivative. To illustrate one example, one of the products which we have been doing for 6 years, 200 time, is called Nifty Accelerator.
Right.
For example, I'm just giving you an illustration. This is the 200 time. It's the same boring product because it's making money, so I will not innovate. Nifty, अगर market 20% जाती है, if market goes up 20% in 3.5 years, the product should give 75. Market goes up 20% in 3.5 years, which is not a very big growth. The product gives you 75. Flip side, drawback is 75 से ज्यादा 1 रुपया मिल नहीं सकता. मार्केट फिर 3 गुना भी हो जाए तो आपको कितना मिलेगा? सिर्फ 75 मिलेगा. First drawback of the structure product is it will not give you more than the maximum return which it has promised. Even if the market triples, you will be stuck at 75% return, not 200% return. That time mutual fund will come to your rescue and do very well for you. That time structure product will say, यार sorry, सिर्फ 75% आपकी रिटर्न मिली, जो कि ठीक अच्छी रिटर्न है, but it will be capped. The other disadvantage is 1 साल तक आप पैसे छू नहीं सकते, lock in of 1 year. I'm just telling you the drawbacks as well of structure product. These are the two prominent drawbacks. So structure product is a combination of deposits and derivative which create a payoff, which have the capacity to act as a plan B,
Right.
not as a plan A.
Sure. And where there's a plan A, there's a plan B, and if a plan B is doing well, that means a plan A may not have done well, and one has to be ready for that. Just before I close this discussion, because there's a lot for us to discuss, but I think it's time for our audience, and it's so wonderful to have a room full of people who are really listening to this discussion so carefully. Just before I close this discussion, I want to understand from you what this whole business of investing in portfolio management schemes, or PMS, has been all about in terms of HNIs. What is that all about? What's the experience been? What are your observations in terms of what they are?
See, out of the 11, 12 products analyzed,
Yeah.
PMS would be the third or the fourth item.
Okay.
So it's not right down there.
Yeah.
But I don't see PMSs, I should not say that as all PMSs, barring a few. 95% of the PMSs you can live without. PMS industry went through a huge increase. उनकी जो 10,000 crores मैनेज करते थे पूरी PMS, now it is more than 2 lakhs in 2 years. Because म्यूचुअल फंड की कमीशन घट गई तो लोगों ने PMS देने शुरू कर दिए. आई एम बीइंग वेरी कैंडिड. ओके, म्यूचुअल फंड में 1% अपफ्रंट मिलता है, एंड यू शुड एज अ राइट ऑफ एन इन्वेस्टर यू शुड अंडरस्टैंड what is the second decimal commission your advisor makes. That should be your right. Rather than thinking how much he makes, make sure that you ask how much does he make, and there has to be a second decimal mathematics. Now mutual funds help me earn 1 to 1.2%, but there is no upfront commission. मतलब पहले दिन कोई कमीशन नहीं मिलेगी, धीरे धीरे धीमे धीमे मिलेगी. अगर आप 10 साल के लिए होल्ड करेंगे तो 10 साल तक मुझे धीरे धीमे कमीशन मिलेगी. आपके पैसे दुगने हो जाएंगे तो मेरी कमीशन भी दुगनी हो जाएगी, which is very good. Both of us are on the same side. If client money is double, my commission is double. So we are on the same side. This commission structure is called a trail structure. Trail. So trail structure का ये मतलब है कि पहले दिन कोई कमीशन नहीं मिलने वाली, उसको सिर्फ ट्रेल मिलेगी. Trail, as the name suggests, is a trailing commission. So, point 1, PMSs take far more risk than needed. If I have to give you a risk measure, Nifty's risk measure is 1313.
Okay.
PMSs have a risk measure of 2122. Nifty का risk measure 13 है, वो क्या है, that is secondary. Nifty का 13 है, PMS के 20-22 का होता है, म्यूचुअल फंड का 14 होता है. So PMSs are 30-40% more riskier than mutual funds. Most PMSs. Okay. So they take more risk to generate the return, which is not commensurate. If you like कॉन्सेंट्रेटेड पोर्टफोलियोज जिसमें ज्यादा स्टॉक ना हो, तो भी एक नया किस्म का म्यूचुअल फंड निकला है अभी अप्रैल 1 2018 से एक नया नया कैटेगरी निकाला सेबी ने. सेबी हैज कम अप विद अ न्यू कैटेगरी कॉल्ड फोकस्ड इक्विटी. After the introduction of this, I personally think even if there's a gun on my head, I'm not buying a PMS. Because focused equity completely makes a PMS redundant. But PMSs give upfront commissions of 3, 4, 7% also. They come and offer me to sell it to my clients. 6, 7% upfront commission. If I'm worried about my company's profits this year, then I have no choice but to sell 500 crores of PMS and earn 35 crores.
All right.
For the company. So basically the point being made here is upfront commissions being capped in 2015 was the reason why PMS industry went 20-fold in 2-3 years.
Okay.
It was and it takes more risk, and after the introduction of 1st April 2018, after an introduction of a focused equity जिसमें कम से कम स्टॉक में म्यूचुअल फंड भी इन्वेस्ट करता है. फोकस्ड इक्विटी में एक फंड है जिसमें सिर्फ 13 स्टॉक है म्यूचुअल फंड में. That's a very concentrated portfolio.
Yeah.
Managed by a guy called Mrinal, right, who manages one of the largest. So if you now have a PMS, you should move to a mutual fund. If you like a concentrated portfolio, right, then you can use focused equity, but don't use a PMS because the risks which they take, if you look at the risk measure, will be significantly more.
All right. Clearly, there's a lot of ground that one can cover with Feroz. And I said at the beginning of the show that it's wonderful to be able to talk to someone who's an investor as well as somebody who's invested in a niche private wealth management company, so to speak. But I think it would be far more fruitful for me to now open up the floor to questions. May I just make a request that you introduce yourselves, you keep your question brief, please. And in case Feroz doesn't fully answer, and you're not quite understanding the answer, perhaps you can catch up later because there's always an opportunity. We want to have as many questions from the floor. This is a great chance for anyone to pick up on anything that we've discussed and even otherwise. So please can we start by getting a few questions from the floor?
Aziz, actually, Alandra's suggests around 30-35% of the portfolio as a plan B into structures. Both debt structures as well as the equity structures, both are a kind of a function on Nifty actually, and your rest of your portfolio is also a function of Nifty. So is there some other benchmark, liquid enough or something else where you can actually plan your structure? My name is Shyam. I have got around 25 years of experience into equity investment actually.
Very good. So Sir's question is that Anand Rathi recommends 30 to 40% in structures, 60% in mutual funds. All the 30-40% is linked to Nifty. Can there be some other linkage to some other underlying, not Nifty? Is that the question, sir?
That's right. Yeah.
I've understood it right. Yeah. So point one is, optically, Nifty is one, but Nifty has 50 stocks. It is a car with 50 shock absorbers to my mind. Now, if I give you an illustration, okay, on I think it was 25th of September 2017, when government planned to put money in these PSU banks, कैपिटलाइज करेंगे हम. गवर्नमेंट ने कहा कि PSU बैंकों में हम एक्स्ट्रा इक्विटी कैपिटल डालेंगे, एक्स्ट्रा पैसे डालेंगे. तो ऑन दैट डे डिफरेंट गवर्नमेंट बेस्ड बैंक्स वेंट अप 30-40%. Private banks went down 20%. Such an eventful day in one day, this kind of swing in different banks. Nifty moved 0.7%. अगर निफ्टी को देखें तो लगता है कि it was an uneventful day. But if you look at the underlying constituents, it was a historical day. So the point I'm trying to make is, Nifty is one. It has 50 stocks which are so cleanly a shock absorbent that even on an eventful day like an historical day which has not happened in at least my life, on that day Nifty moved 0.7%, 0.8%. So if I'm pegging my client's life to the largest index of this country, which represents 60% of the market, then I feel a little relieved, point one. If I was pegging you to BSE small cap index, I would be very worried. Point two, now I'll tell you how your life is going to be dependent in all product classes. You would be surprised that mutual fund industry, which has 9 lakh crores, 9 lakh crores, it takes a minute to comprehend that number, that kind of money, in 10 shares has 2.5 lakh crores. Can you believe it? देखने को 400 फंड हैं, ओके 400 फंड तो ओपन एंडेड हैं, और क्लोज्ड एंडेड जोड़ूं तो 1,500 फंड हैं. 10 शेयरों में, 10 कंपनी के शेयरों में 2.5 लाख करोड़ लगा हुआ है, 25 शेयरों में 5 लाख करोड़ लगा हुआ है. So optically I am invested in 20 different mutual funds. Money is also converging back into the capital markets. So point one, I completely buy your point on the debt side. But it's a very valid question. So one reason why it doesn't bother me so much to peg my client's life to Nifty is because it's the smoothest car I know. It's like a Merc or any German car. It's the smoothest car I know. Of course, there could be something smoother, and that time I'll move there. Point two is, if you went into equities through any other platform also, the convergence in 10 shares, 2.5 lakh crores is a lot of money. It gets converged. But people see so many mutual funds, but it gets converged. But still, I would say that's a very important question. Now, so to answer that question, we are doing something.
Okay.
We are also worried. Debt side पे risk नहीं लेना चाहिए. So in debt products, as recently as this month and last month, we are wanting to give an extension. अगर उल्टी पड़ जाए चाल, तो मेरे क्लाइंट के पास एक्सटेंशन होना चाहिए, ताकि he can wait and not bite the bullet. So you will see our representatives coming to you with an extension on a debt product, so that if Nifty, a smoothest car, also goes crashes, then I give it 2 years for a repair, so that you don't bite the bullet and not lose your return. You don't lose your return and make those 8-9% at least. So
that would be wonderful.
So then what happens is 14 बनाने गए थे, उल्टी पड़ गई, at least 9 तो बना के आओ. So that extension is now the term sheet is being wet by my lawyers. So that's a very important question and it bothers us. But I was just giving you these two snippets to understand that the risk is Seemit on Nifty.
Another quick one. Do you see any black swans, grey swans in 2019, as she was saying? That's a year of focus.
Yeah.
See, I think what are the risks to see? But one thing is, it's clear. Every point in time there has to be some uncertainty for sure. Okay, 2009 में कुछ था, 2010 में कुछ था. So if you look at every year, there is uncertainty. What is one uncertainty for Asia, not just India, is the trade war between China and US. Because I think US China से इतने ज़्यादा commodity मंगाता है कि $500 billion हर साल US ज़्यादा खरीदता है, China US से कम खरीदता है. So that, sorry, I'm trying to demystify it for the people. If I said a trade war, it can be intimidating, especially to some people. So so China and US should not fight on the trade, that's one. US increase in interest rates could be one. Domestic general election, these are impactful events, but I don't see a black swan in the making for sure.
I will just articulate a concern from a parental perspective. I am planning for my daughter, 20 years old, a certain corpus of money. In our own lifetime, people of my generation have at least seen extreme bull bear market at least 4 times or 5 times. Even if you see the last year, there have been a market cap loss of about $13 trillion worldwide, which is pretty scary. It is equivalent to almost the whole markets of India, US and Japan combined, if you see in terms of market cap. Similarly, as you alluded to other crises as well, say in the Lehman Brothers crisis, there were a whole set of e-commerce companies which simply disappeared from a $88 value to zero. Similarly, in India also, several stocks like Silverline, which were, if we go back a little earlier era, They were the first listed stock on NYSE, it simply disappeared. In comparison to that, we had good experiences also. Infosys was listed for the first time in NASDAQ and it did very well. So there are all set of experiences. But if we see from a parental perspective, we cannot afford a risk of a major chunk of a portfolio disappearing. So from that perspective, what would be your advice, say from a 5 to 10 year time frame?
Correct. So of course, firstly, you're fortunate that you have a daughter. I just have a son. So that's very good. Now, of course, if your daughter requires money for education and maybe you want to plan for a marriage and stuff, you might not want to take so much risk. Now, whatever instances you quoted, of course, there has been a huge divergence of return. That's exactly what I'm saying. हमारे हाथ में सिर्फ risk management ही है, return management नहीं है. Now, if you look at any Anand Rathi client's portfolio in a bad year like this financial year, he would have made 1-2%, 3%. Is it 15%? The answer is no. Right? Half the, like you rightly said, in India, half the Bombay Stock Exchange stocks are down 30%. Half of them are down 30%. That's why PMSs have lost 15, 20, 30% also. So the point is, since you are looking at hedging using LEAPS, L-E-A-P-S, you can Google it. So you hedge your equity, you peg yourself to an index. A company can stop existing. जैसे आपने कहा Silver Line or some company, I am not aware of, but went completely belly up and it is no more there. But can Nifty not be there? Because Nifty will automatically, if one company, Satyam did bad, it went out of Nifty temporarily. Right? So I am pegging my life to an index which is an auto-correcting mechanism. निफ्टी में जो स्टॉक थे 15 साल पहले, आज स्टॉक ही अलग है. कंपनी डूब सकती है. इंडेक्स इज एन ऑटो करेक्टिंग मैकेनिज्म. राइट, टू सर्च पॉइंट, अगर एक कंपनी बहुत खराब करती है, फ्रॉड करती है, तो कंपनी निफ्टी से निकल ही जाएगी. और अगर मेरी निफ्टी पर निर्भरता है और निफ्टी इज ऑटो करेक्टिंग विदाउट मी इन्वॉल्विंग माई सेल्फ, सो यू हैव टू मैनेज रिस्क. पॉइंट वन आई एम सेइंग इज you can manage risk in certain extent that in a bad year also you will make 2-3% return, which is the case now, to be honest with you. Last 3 years, our entire AUM would have made 15% return. So we audit average Anand Rathi customers' return and risk, average, full, total thousands of crores, we do an audit, that's 15.5-16%. This year has been 2-3%. But in a bad year, if I don't lose, then when the market does well, then I make up. So the risk is not so much. Newspapers highlight more risk. 13 trillion, on what base they'll intimidate us. But if you manage risk, you'll be okay. And if you have 5-10 years, I don't see that you can preserve your capital and not make 12-13-14% in Indian context. So I think you will also have to beat inflation. So point one, risk manage हो सकती हैं, stocks डूब सकते हैं, but index कभी नहीं डूबते, because index, if the stock becomes wrong, they throw it out of the index and bring another stock. So Nifty, if all 50 companies go belly up, it will bring the next 50 and Nifty will still exist.
As you said that the asset which has given a stupendous return in the past may not give in the future. So because of the principle of mean reversal. Don't you think the current Nifty is overpriced if you see in terms of the earning potentials of the companies? If the economy is growing say 8 to 9%, then companies can give you return of 13 to 14%. But if you see the overall in the past, last 10-15 years, the price to earning multiples on average of Nifty has been 18 or 19.
Correct.
Today it is 26, which is almost 30 to 40% higher. That means the Nifty could be overvalued by 30 to 40%.
Got it.
If you see the past history of Nifty, say if you are sitting in 2007, where the Nifty was of similar values of price to earning ratio of 26, 27, and if you make a simulation of that period, if I had invested money in 2007 over 12 months, and then if I see the returns in 5 years in long term till 2012, I have taken 5 mutual funds of your product portfolio, and I have seen that if I had invested in 12 installments in 2007, my return after 5 years would not be more than 5 to 7%. In that scenario, how can you say that you are guaranteeing, or say you are expecting a return of 13 to 14%. If we are sitting in, say, in 2007 situation, where the price to earning multiple is of same value today.
I'll answer that, sir. Got your question. सर कहते हैं कि equity बहुत महंगी है, point 1. Point 2, अगर मैंने म्यूचुअल फंड वो खराब समय में खरीदे होते, जब महंगी थी और गिर जाती, तो मेरा क्या असर होता? सिर्फ 5% की रिटर्न बनती. Valid point. I'll answer each of them. Point 1, निफ्टी महंगी है या सस्ती है? 1 is to see PE ratio. Last 10 years, Nifty return is 8%. Long-term average is 15%. Okay? For 30 years, what is the return? 15%. Last 10 years is 8%. Bull run, what do you mean by a bull run? When return is greater than average, it's called bull run. If return is below average, it is called bear run. 8 by any standards is not above average. It is below average. So I would say bull run is not over. रहा सवाल PE का. Okay, PE is, Nifty is quoting at a 23 PE. 500 rupees is the earning this year, expected. 500 रुपए निफ्टी कमाती है, 11,000 का वैल्यू है, तो 22 की PE हुई. PE actually is not a very good measure. PEG, I'm just only for sir, I'm giving this conversation. PEG, PE to the base of growth, expected growth is a better measure. On that measure, Nifty is faring very, very well, because last 4 years, Nifty has not grown. So PEG is very, very good vis-a-vis 2008. 2008 May, growth earnings of Sensex had doubled. On that doubled earnings, you had 27 PE trailing. Do you understand? Today, growth has not doubled. If growth would have doubled or earnings would have doubled and then you quote 26 PE, it has got so much froth that I wouldn't touch. So point 1, 10 years return of Nifty is 8%. Okay, bull run is 2003 to 2007, Nifty return was 38%. That is significantly greater than 15%. So I would say this was a bull run. 10 years phase. Now raha sawal, that's why I said plan A and plan B. Now in your same analysis, add structures and then see what the output is. You will be in double digit. So what you said, saying that I analyzed 5 mutual funds from that period, if 12 months, if you staggered and bought a structure along with it for 40%, you will see the output will be in double digits. That's why I'm saying it can't be just one. You will have to have a plan B. That's the period, like this is the period where mutual funds have delivered this year -8%, -9%. Structure has delivered 16, is why our clients are okay at 1, 2%, 3%, somebody at 5%, somebody at 0. So you will have to have a plan A and plan B. That's exactly what the example exemplifies.
Wonderful having you as an audience, I must say. Feroz, always lovely to have a discussion with you. Thank you once again for being a part of this special episode and chapter of Financial Planning.